Hi, I'm Carrie Patrick, your host for Eye on St. Lucie. Have you heard about a possible 1/2 cent sales tax? Do you know why it is being proposed? What this means for your quality of life and your community? Or how will this impact our students? For these answers and more, don't change that channel and stay with us as we welcome Erick Gill and Mark Satterlee to help us understand more about this proposal. Well, gentlemen, it's very nice to have you here today to help shed some light on this topic that many of our community members have questions about, and I know that both of you come to us well vested with the information. So, Erick, why don't we start with you, and you give us a little bit of background about your role and what you're doing to help educate the public with this.
Well, thanks for having us on, Carrie. I'm Erick Gill. I'm the Communications Division Director for the St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners. And we, the Board of County Commissioners, have asked, or put on the ballot for the November 6th ballot to ask voters to consider a 1/2 cent sales tax increase. And so my role is to help inform and educate the voters of St. Lucie County on, what this tax, if passed, how much money it'll collect, what projects will be spent. And our focus has really been better roads, more sidewalks, and cleaner rivers, and because it can only be used for capital improvement projects, and we'll get more into that. But essentially, my role has been to get out in the community, talk to different HOAs, help with the website, PowerPoint presentations, and things of that nature too. So the voters, when they go to the polls, can be informed on what they're voting on.
And that's so important in our democratic society and the responsibilities that we have to make sure that we are informed. And Mark, you're a very familiar face on this topic too, and you've helped many people. Tell us what you're doing.
Thank you for having us this morning. I'm Mark Satterlee. I'm the Deputy County Administrator, and my role is to be the sort of the quarterback of the project team. Erick and the City of Port St. Lucie and the City of Fort Pierce, all of the staffs are working very closely together, and so my role is to kind of, herd the cats, and but also, like Erick, go out into the public and speak to different groups. I've spoken to the Chamber of Commerce and the realtors and the Economic Development Council and groups like that, and just provide information on why this is on the ballot and how the funds will be spent. So it's a real team effort.
Yeah. And just something I think that's very important for everyone to understand is while we are talking about this today, and you are out in the community, Erick, like you said, you're pushing information through social media and other platforms as well, so people do have points to go back and reference should they have a question and want to do some research on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. We created an interactive website. There's several different URLs that go to the same thing. You can go to slc-halfcent.com or .org, or psl-halfcent.com.org, and fp-halfcent.com or .org, because if this passes, the county and the two cities will all share in the revenue and use that revenue to build projects within the city. So we build an interactive website. There's maps there, so you can look at your house, see which projects will be done in your neighborhood. There's also a frequently asked questions page, and if you have a question that's not on there, we have an email address. You can email it and we'll answer it, and then actually put it on the website in case somebody else has that same exact question.
All right. Okay, so let's just start by taking a little deeper dive into what this is and why this is being proposed. You referenced earlier, 3 large categories. So I'm just going to turn things over to you and help us understand why this is being proposed in the first place.
Sure, and Mark can help too. He's got a lot of background and experience on this. For the last few years, the county has been playing catch up on a lot of building new things and maintaining our roads because of the housing depression, so to speak. We're collecting less revenues, and so we had to focus on just doing the bare minimum. So, for example, our repaving. We should be repaving roads every 15 years?
15 to 20 years, yes.
And we're on a 75-year repaving schedule. So by that time, it's down to dirt, and we're looking at having to rebuild roads, which is 10 times more costly to have to rebuild it. So we need to create a new revenue stream to help catch up on those maintenance projects.
And what I would add to that is that we've always funded our capital projects, our maintenance projects in our road and bridge division out of the gas tax. Unfortunately, that has really that source of revenue has either gone down or remained flat. In fact, we collect less money in 2017 than we did in 2008. And so, the money that is there to maintain what is possibly the county's most valuable asset, the 300 or more miles of roads that we're responsible for, it just isn't there. It just isn't keeping up. So we're on this long schedule, and to not have the resources, to maintain that, it's a part of our county's fiduciary responsibility is to maintain, our infrastructure, in good shape. And so that's one of the primary reasons. Another reason is, of course, to build sidewalks. Sidewalks are very important, particularly in the city of Port St. Lucie. Getting kids to school, having a safe place to walk so they're not walking, along the side of the road. They're off the side of the road on sidewalks. It's just a lot more safe, as I'm sure you're well aware. And then the other large component is we have a lot of older neighborhoods in the county that were built long before current, drainage and runoff standards. So the county's in the process of trying to retrofit those neighborhoods, whether it's Indian River Estates or Lakewood Park, Harmony Heights, Paradise Park. Some of these neighborhoods, the water just flows off into the canal system and then directly into the Indian River. So, we think it's important that we provide that improved level of stormwater management, but also that helps clean the water, before it goes into the lagoon.
And some of the things you're talking about, it impacts our quality of life. We appreciate having roads that are well maintained. We appreciate being able to walk to parks and schools, and some of our neighbors and friends, and even some of our shopping centers. And that's something that when we don't have it, we really miss it, or when it becomes in disrepair, we see the need. So this is being very proactive as well. And like you said, it's easier to maintain and more cost efficient to maintain than to rebuild. We know that with our own homes. Sure. The one thing I think that's very important, especially as an educator, is knowing that safe passage to and from school. We have children that ride bikes, we have children that walk. We have moms, taking their babies in strollers to schools, to walk home with their children, and making sure that it's not in a dangerous type of an atmosphere is so very important. So I appreciate the fact, as an educator, that this is something that's being attended to.
Yeah, and as a parent with 2 kids in public schools, unfortunately, we don't live close enough to schools my kids go to, but I do see when we pick up our children, a lot of kids riding bikes, and like you said, parents coming to meet them. And our county administrator likes to say that a lot of this area was Florida on the cheap. We back when, especially Port St. Lucie was developed, it was plotted for, what was it, 80,000 homes, and that's it. No retail, no infrastructure, And it's not the city's fault. It was the original developer that developed that city. So over time, the city has had to play catch up on adding the infrastructure like sidewalks and wastewater and lighting, and then they're still playing catch up.
And they do have the city of Port St. Lucie has a sidewalk plan. But I think that were the sales tax to pass, the additional half cent, I think would really help them accelerate the projects that they would be able to get to, because as Erick said, they're spending their time playing catch up because the city was just established without a lot of the basic infrastructure that that we come to expect.
Yeah, I think they said they would cut their sidewalk plan from a 20-year plan down to, I think, in half to 10 years.
That's wonderful. All right, so you mentioned years. So what is the time frame for this? Is this something that will just go on and on forever, or can our voters expect an expiration to this?
It's 10 years. Half cent for 10 years. It's projected to raise annually about $18 million. The good thing about it is that it's paid for by everybody, tourists, or visitors, renters, so that the burden doesn't just fall on the property taxpayer. So that's, I think, one of the benefits of it is that it is, that it does, everybody pays, everybody helps pay for it. The money is split between the governments, the different entities. The county will receive about $9 million a year, and over the course of the life of the sales tax, were it to pass, it would raise enough money that we we would really be able to get to and really get caught up with our infrastructure projects, our road repaving, our culvert replacement, bridge repairs that we have to make. Hurricane Irma really did a number on the bridge over Taylor Creek, and if you've been down Edwards Road, that's all damage resulting from the, I don't know, 15 to 18 inches of rain that part of the county received during Hurricane Irma, and it's a $6 million fix that wasn't in anybody's budget. So, you know, we not only do we have to catch up, but we got put a little further behind because of Irma.
And we're preparing for yet another hurricane season, as we always do. You know, one of the questions that I have heard is a question about whether or not this impacts our residents equally. Is it regressive, and is there disproportionate burden on some of our low-income families?
Sure. And again, as Mark said, it's a tax that everyone would contribute. Up to 20% could come from people that don't even live in this county, that are visitors or part-time residents. And it is, the tax isn't, even though it's a sales tax, it would only apply to the first $5,000. So those making large purchases, buying new vehicles or boats or things of that nature, would only be taxed on the first $5,000. And it doesn't include food. There are some exemptions that they won't be seeing that additional half-cent sales tax on. I think the average cost to the resident would be about $50 a year.
Okay. So no tax on food, medicine, gas, correct?
Yes, the gas tax is already there,
Okay.
so it wouldn't be an additional gas tax.
All right. So, you know, we have property taxes. So why a sales tax and not, you know, focusing on some of the property taxes that are already paid by our residents?
Yeah, I think, well, as Mark said, you know, in order to raise this revenue, to put it all on the backs of property owners, to raise the millage rates would be unfair and difficult for, you know, the elected officials to swallow and the voters really to accept. So this spreads the burden out across the board, not just, you know, to everybody who rents, but as, you know, the visitors that come here as well. Also, you know, there is as Mark said, a sunset clause. So after 10 years, you know, we would have to go back out to the voters to see if they wanted to renew this, to continue that. And I know in the county to the north of us, they have a half-cent sales tax, and they've renewed it just the last election for another 10 or 15 years.
10 years, I believe. So, as I may have mentioned earlier, we've always used gas tax revenue for these projects, and as it has, you know, cars have become more efficient, people don't use as much gas, so it doesn't raise as much revenue. And so if we were to take the revenue from another place, if we were to take it out of the general fund, which we've never done before, that would simply mean that some other service that the county provides would either be, you know, cut or reduced in some way, you know. So, you know, the county funds the sheriff's department, that we put money into the health department. Of course, we pay for parks, you know, all of our libraries, all of our facilities, and all of those rely on, you know, the general funds, the discretionary money that the Board of County Commissioners has to make decisions about. And, you know, if we have to take that revenue and shift it over to maintain the infrastructure, then, you know, something is going to have to come from somewhere else.
Yeah, just in 2010, when we started to see the housing values drop, the county did take drastic steps to reduce staffing levels. We went from a little over 900 employees down to 600 roughly.
Yeah. Cut our employees by a third.
Yeah, and we reduced library hours. You know, libraries used to be
that, yes.
almost 7 days a week. Now some went to 3, and you know, we've slowly begun to add those hours back. But you know, if the sales tax weren't passed, the board would have to make a tough decision on either raising the millage rate or, like Mark said, shifting those funds from somewhere else, either from the sheriff's office or, you know, reducing library hours. And we'd hate to do this since we just opened a brand new, beautiful library in Port St. Lucie with the Paul Lewis Library. There's more than 100,000 people living within a 5-mile radius of that library. And so you talk about school kids that can go in there and use the 3D printer that they have there and some of the technology that they have that the kids may not have at home.
So we're really, again, talking about quality of life.
Yep.
And, you know, we talk about St. Lucie County being a wonderful place to live, to grow, to learn, to play. And we want to continue that. And, you know, this is great because our economy is shifting, so that means our needs are shifting. You've talked about the more efficient cars, and property taxes are going up now. So, you know, that's something that people are looking at going, well, my property taxes are going up. There's more money there.
Well, the values are going up. a lot of the municipalities that are keeping their, like the Board of County Commissioners, were keeping, or they'll still vote on it later, but they're proposed to keep the millage rate the same. But because values are going up, it's a formula. Your value times the rate. So as the values go up, then obviously what you pay is going to go up. But we a couple of years ago, the Board of County Commissioners actually lowered the millage rate because the values are going up. And we're actually, our overall budget this year is actually going to be down, even though the tax rate is going to be the same, because again, we're funneling more money to like the sheriff's office to help pay for SROs and things like that.
All right, so great segue. What are you doing with all those tax dollars that you have right now? I mean, you just mentioned a few.
Yeah.
And what is the oversight? Should this proposal go through? How is the accountability for these dollars being spent?
As part of the education effort is to talk about these four layers of protection, and one of them is that the state statute says that has to be used for this. So we can't take this money, raise this money, and then go, spend it on something else that's not related, right? Not related to infrastructure. The Board of County Commissioners have adopted an ordinance to put this on the ballot, so it's in our own ordinances that it has to be spent this way. And then I think the Citizens Oversight Committee that the board will establish, should it pass, they will also be, St. Lucie County citizens will be looking at what the projects are, where the money's being spent, and keeping an eye on it. So, nobody wants to see what happened to the schools back in the day when, the bait and switch with the lottery money. So this is really, something that we take very seriously and want to make sure that, it's spent where they say it's spent. And, the commissioners have said this is what we're going to do, so.
Okay.
And you talked about, what have the counties and the cities done with the revenues that we have collected. And one of the challenges, at least the county has seen, is a lot of unfunded mandates that have come down from the state. And we've had additional increases in law enforcement. The Board of County Commissioners funds the sheriff's office as well as all the other constitutional offices. So as their needs grow, that increase our costs. A good example is the tax collector's building a new building. He's paying for that building with his funds, but it's the Board of County Commissioners staff that'll have to maintain the AC units in that facility and stay on top of it. And the new library we added, that's additional services, but it's also additional annual revenue or expenditures that we have to.
And I don't even think we've talked about the number of new residents that we have here that, as our market grows with our residents, then we have to meet their needs as well. Hence a new library and some of the other things.
More cars on the road, more wear and tear on the bridges. And in the last 2 summers, we've had Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Irma.
Within 12 months.
The same budget year. They were actually within the same budget year. And while we were hopeful that FEMA was going to get reimbursed, but we're still fighting FEMA claims from 2004 from Francis and Jean with FEMA. So it's a long and lengthy process, but we have to upfront the money.
Right.
So whether that's debris removal or culvert, we had 12 culverts collapse after Irma or fail. And some of that damage you don't see immediately, especially with water damage. You have to wait till the water recedes, and that the erosion occurs, and a month or 2 later, we see the effects.
Yeah, and Edwards Road is really a great example of that. As the drainage system just started to fail,
right.
And so we've had to close it. We're making emergency repairs. But that road may have to be repaired from US 1 all the way to Oleander completely.
And people are rerouted and detoured and don't really know why sometimes. They just expect the roads to be fluid because they have been, maintained to the best of your ability over the years. We've grown accustomed to that, and we want to see that. And you've talked about buckets of money and what can be used and what cannot be used. People may look at projects like the port and say, well, you've dumped $25 million there. Why can't you use that money?
That's a really great point. That was an upfront expenditure that the county decided to make. We bonded that. But the projection is that, the economic study that we had done prior to making the purchase tells us that, within a few years we could have 800 people working at the port with over $100 million in wages and investment, and that's more than enough to pay that back. So we feel like that's a good economic development investment. I think the other question people have is, well, you spent $55 million on the Mets, on renovating the stadium, Well, and that all of the county's contribution to that comes out of the tourist tax, which is the 5 pennies that our tourists pay when they come and spend the night in our hotels.
Which is like over $30 million a year, isn't it? The draw. I mean, you all are very
the Mets,
in depth with your studies.
Yeah, the Mets generate about $36 million in economic impact by having the stadium there. But the bed tax alone, of that 5 pennies, pretty much pretty much 4 of it goes to the debt services and maintenance of that stadium. So general fund dollars don't go toward the operations of the stadium. It's all derived from the bed tax. And then the extra penny, those funds go to the tourism staff and marketing the area. And we do get that question. Well, tourism's up, we see the hotels, why can't that be spent on beaches or roads? But again, like Mark said, by state statute, it can only be spent on the debt services of the stadium and maintenance.
And one of the other things you mentioned, the port and the money invested there could be, hundreds and hundreds of jobs. And the school system works very closely with the Economic Development Council and the city and the county, looking at where our job trends are as we prepare students to graduate work ready, college ready. And so many of our career and technical academies are based on those projections of needs in the area. So what you do and the decisions that are made and our voters being educated on these things, it truly impacts so many aspects of our lives here in St. Lucie County.
Yeah. At one point with the investment of with the projected $18 million we expect to raise, we hope that will actually turn into 2 or 3 times that, because we will look to get grants both at the state and federal level to help with these projects, but we need that seed money to match with it. So if we know we're getting that revenue in, we can do a bond to help pay for a road and get it done quicker. A good example, in the mid-90s, the voters of this county approved a environmental lands bond to tax themselves to buy environmental lands that we kept from development, turn into passive recreation preserves and parks. That was a $20 million bond. We've spent $76 million worth of, on land, so by matching it with state and federal grants.
And that's a very smart, savvy way to get more for your buck.
Yeah. More for our pennies.
Yeah, no, pennies is better. Yes, that's a much better analogy. All right, so we have a few more minutes, and voters, when they make decisions, really it's how does it impact me? What are some of the specific projects that are coming forward?
I think for the repaving projects, at the top of the list is Prima Vista Boulevard.
Okay.
Right now it gets about 35,000 cars a day. That'll change when Crosstown opens, but it's still, a main east-west artery. It's always going to be a main east-west artery, and the county actually is responsible for the segment of the road from Aroso to US 1, and that road is not in the best of shape, and that is our top priority for repaving, is to get that done. And should the half-cent pass, that's our staff is going to have that project pretty much ready to go in 2019. The tax will begin on January 1st if it's to pass, and so we'll start upfronting some of those projects and make sure we're out there getting things done. I know the city of Port St. Lucie is eager to do the same thing. I know the city of Fort Pierce. If you ask Nick Bims, which roads need repaving in Fort Pierce, he says pretty much all of them. So, and I know they've been trying to catch up. They're kind of in the same place that we are. In Port St. Lucie, I think St. Lucie West Boulevard is a real priority for them. Congestion management down there, increasing the amount of traffic that can handle it, because there's so much traffic out there because of all of the commercial space that's there and all the office space, and of course the stadium and adjacent to part of the college, and so they're focused on really improving the traffic flow through St. Lucie West on St. Lucie West Boulevard.
Yeah, and sidewalks, obviously, as we stated earlier, they have a 20-year sidewalk plan that's to be able to cut that in half. And in all 3 municipalities, when we were picking our projects, we tried to focus on projects that were quote-unquote shovel-ready. We had permitting for that we knew we could get going right away within the first 5 years of this 10-year tax, so residents would see improvement right away.
Something that's unique and people may not understand is that in 7th grade we have a project called Project Citizen. And we are encouraging our students to be very knowledgeable of the democratic process and their city government and how things work. So this project encourages students to look around their community and determine what they perceive as a concern or a problem, to research it, get in contact with those people in city government and county government to see what can be done to solve their perception of the problem. And in the past, we've had several of our student groups look at the sidewalk issues, look at crossing guards and other aspects. Some of the things that you're talking about, in fact, in Northport, a project that they did last year is being attended to by the city of Port St. Lucie, and it's a sidewalk concern. So it's just a wonderful blend of our students learning how the government works and getting involved at an early age so that as they grow and have their voices heard by voting, they understand a little bit more about it. We have a few more minutes. Do you have any closing comments, something relevant that you'd really like our viewing audience to know before we sign off?
I think that, the water quality is such an important issue. All throughout the Treasure Coast, we're not going to solve the Lake Okeechobee problem with the half-cent, but we can address drainage issues in Lakewood Park, which we had 21 inches of rain with Irma, and while no drainage system can handle that kind of deluge, certainly making improvements to the drainage system in Lakewood Park will improve their quality of life. Doing the final phase of Indian River Estates, Easy Street, just a good afternoon rain sometimes will flood Easy Street. And so we have a project that we just don't have the funds for that we could really help improve, the quality of life for the people in Indian River Estates. So, those are some of the important, and also improve the quality of water that is discharged into the lagoon, so we don't have the kind of issues that we've seen further south.
Well, I think you've done a fantastic job of helping us to understand, and as we started at the beginning of the show with, for more information, there are many, many outlets on our social media site. They can go to the county page.
It's right there on the homepage of the county's website, as well as slchalfcent.org. We'll also be having some town hall open houses in late September, so we encourage residents and even bring their kids out. We're going to have some activities with them to, again, help them learn about the governmental process and what we're trying to do here.
Sounds fantastic. Stay tuned for more. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Carrie Patrick, and this is WLX-TV. On behalf of the station's team, I would like to thank you for joining us today. That's all for this show, but we invite you to follow us, like us, and watch us on our social media outlets. And as always, keep your eye on St. Lucie.